patients may have to pay from their own pockets separate fees for scans like MRI at public hospitals as part of the city's public healthcare system reform. Co-location immigration clearance arrangements may be available for the Hong Kong-Shenzhen Western Rail Link. And 2 primary schools won't run subsidized Primary 1 classes in the next academic year. Education Chief Christine Choi says the reduction in Primary 1 placements is expected. Good evening. You are watching Cable News. I'm Evelyn Bai. Secretary for Health Lo Chong-mao revealed that they are considering the implementation of itemized bills for imaging services at public hospitals. The review of fees at public hospitals is entering the final stage. Apart from adjusting the charge for the use of emergency room services, the authorities are planning to bill certain services such as magnetic resonance imaging and computed tomography as individual items.
Lo
said, currently the government fully funds outpatient CT scans and MRI services, making them completely free of charge. However, this led to some overuse, prompting the government to adjust to a reasonable co-payment model. He emphasized that charges will be affordable and will not apply to emergency and inpatient cases that require urgent procedures, with the itemized fees primarily targeting outpatient services. Lo added that the revenue from the adjusted fees will be fully allocated back to medical services to support patients with critical illnesses. Sources indicating that the Hong Kong-Shenzhen Western Rail Link connecting Hongshui-Q and Shenzhen's Qianhai area will likely adopt a co-location immigration clearance arrangement on the mainland side. Jeremy Zhu shares more.
The link, part of the official plans to support the northern metropolis development, will pass through Ha-Chun and Laofaoshan. Authorities stated that the immigration checkpoint will likely be located in Qianhai, though the exact site is yet to be finalized. A potential station at Shenzhen Bay is also under consideration. It is expected to be completed by 2034 at the earliest. Surveying and design studies will commence within the year. Lawmaker Gary Chen believes that setting the checkpoint on the mainland would be more efficient and cost-effective than in the SAR. However, he expressed concerns that using Hongshui-Q as the terminus could exacerbate traffic congestion in the area. As the vicinity develops and its population grows, he proposed extending the rail link to Sunny Bay to help distribute passenger flow. Reports also indicate that authorities will open the project to public tender, allowing companies other than MTR to participate. Legislator Lau Kok-fan suggested that awarding the project to a mainland company to build the line from the north could reduce costs. He hopes new contractors will bring fresh ideas, technologies, and faster construction speeds. The Legislative Council's panel on transport will hold a meeting later this month to discuss the progress of the Northern Metropolis rail projects. Jeremy Zhu, Cable News.
2 primary schools will now receive government grants to operate Primary 1 classes in the coming academic year, after failing to enroll the minimum 16 pupils required due to the decline in the city's student population. Jeremy Zhu again tells us more.
The affected schools are Price Memorial Catholic Primary School in Wong Tai Sin and Ap Lee Chow Kai Fong Primary School in Southern District. This student from the Wong Tai Sin School expressed her sadness, saying she had anticipated this outcome in recent years, as she noticed younger cohorts only had 1 or 2 classes. A parent with 3 children at the school said she was worried and hoped the school could continue, praising its quality. Principal Maureen Ho stated the school would discuss future plans with its sponsoring bodies and communicate with relevant parties soon. The 2 schools now face 3 options: closure, merging with another primary school, or applying to run a privately funded Primary 1 class. If they choose the latter, they must operate the class for 6 consecutive academic years. However, if they fail to enroll enough students during that period, they cannot reapply for private funding. Additionally, the new academic year has scrapped the special review policy, which previously allowed schools to save themselves by meeting teaching quality standards. Schools wishing to raise concerns about the arrangements must submit their feedback to the Education Bureau by the 27th of this month. Jeremy Zhu, Cable News.
Education Secretary Christine Choi stated that authorities have already adopted a flexible approach to minimize the number of schools losing their Primary 1 intake. Speaking to the press, Choi highlighted that the SAR's declining birth rate has led to a structural rather than transitional drop in Primary 1 age children. She acknowledged that the reduction in Primary 1 placements is expected and emphasized the need to address the issue proactively, helping the education sector find sustainable solutions. The education chief also warned that double-digit numbers of schools could possibly face closure in the coming years, describing the future challenge as even more significant than the current situation. Amid concerns that the review of income and asset limits for public housing applications could encourage applicants to lie flat, the Housing Authority has reiterated that the adjusted criteria have taken socio-economic conditions into account. Jeremy Zhu has the details.
The Housing Authority has earlier proposed an average increase of 1.7% to the income and asset limits. For example, the income ceiling for a one-person household would rise by $150 to $13,090, while for a two-person household, it would increase by $300 to $20,230. During a legislative council meeting, several lawmakers argued that the revised limits are still too low. Lawmaker Kitson Yang pointed out that even a security guard earns a minimum of $13,500, meaning a couple both working as security guards would exceed the limit. He questioned whether this implies one person should quit their job to qualify. Another legislator, Chan Hok-fong, warned that setting asset limits too low could hinder upward mobility, as some might reduce their work efforts to meet the eligibility requirements, leading to a lie-flat phenomenon. In response, Permanent Secretary for Housing Charmaine Lee stated that the current criteria are the most objective way to assist families in greatest need. She emphasized that the government does not encourage anyone to loaf around, and that the review mechanism's formula already reflects hikes in the statutory minimum wage. The Subsidized Housing Committee will review the proposals next Friday. If approved, the new limits will take effect on the 1st of next month. Jeremy Zhu, Cable News.
The city has welcomed 8.4 million visitors in the first 2 months of this year, marking a 7% increase year-on-year. Among these, 6.5 million were from the mainland, rising 4% year-on-year, while non-mainland travelers reached 1.91 million, marking a 20% surge. The Tourism Board noted strong performance in the short-haul traveling market, with visitor arrivals from the Philippines, Indonesia, Japan, and South Korea jumping by over 30% compared to the same period last year. In the long-haul ones, 500,000 visitors flocked to the city, up 20%, with Australia logging remarkable growth at 34%. Several people were arrested and home-searched in Belgium as part of a corruption probe in which lobbyists working for Chinese tech giant Huawei were suspected of bribing current and former lawmakers in the European Parliament. Belgium's federal prosecutor confirmed that the alleged bribery is said to have benefited Huawei, adding that the offenses were committed by a criminal organization. The researches were carried out in Belgium as well as Portugal. Another person was arrested in France. In addition, offices inside the EU Parliament allocated 2 parliamentary assistants allegedly involved were sealed, as ordered by a judge. In response, Huawei said the company has a zero-tolerance policy towards corruption or other wrongdoing. and takes these allegations seriously and will urgently communicate with the investigation to further understand the situation. In Beijing, the Foreign Ministry reiterated that Chinese companies should abide by the laws overseas and urged the European countries to provide fair and non-discriminating environments for Chinese companies. Russian President Vladimir Putin said Russia agrees in principle with the U.S. ceasefire proposal, but the terms need to be worked out. However, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky claimed that Putin is manipulative and seeking to extend the war. Anna Chen has the story.
Speaking at a press conference at Kremlin, Putin said he agreed with the idea of a ceasefire in Ukraine, but that questions remained about the nature of a truce as he set out a number of tough conditions. The Russian leader suggested Ukraine should neither rearm nor mobilize, and that Western military aid to Kyiv be halted during the 30-day ceasefire. He also noted that it's necessary to develop a mechanism to control possible breaches of the truce. Zelensky quickly criticized Putin's response as very manipulative, accusing him of dragging out the negotiations rather than rejecting the deal completely. Putin, of course, is afraid to tell President Trump directly that he wants to continue this war, Zelensky added. On the other hand, Trump sounded a positive tone.
He put out a very promising statement, but it wasn't complete. And yeah, I'd love to meet with him or talk to him, but we have to get it over with fast.
Meanwhile, Putin met Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff behind closed doors in the Kremlin to push for a ceasefire, which Ukraine has accepted. Ahead of the talks, Russia claimed that it recaptured the town of Sucha, a strategic Russian town in Kursk, as well as 2 other towns in the region. However, Ukrainian forces rebuked the claims. Anna Chen, Cable News.
An American Airlines plane caught fire after landing, and 178 people aboard were safely evacuated at Denver International Airport. Anna Chen again reports.
The fire broke out in the right engine of the aircraft, sending smoke billowing into the air.
My kids are volunteers.
Passengers were anxiously waiting for evacuation inside the cabin. The plane, flying from Colorado to Texas, reported engine vibrations and was diverted to Denver Thursday evening.
Oh, what happened?
While the Boeing 737-800 was taxiing to the gate, the engine caught fire. Some passengers were seen exiting the aircraft and standing on the wing as ground crew were pushing ladders to help them come down. Others used inflatable slides to reach the ground safely. All 172 passengers and 6 crew aboard were evacuated. 12 were taken to the hospital with minor injuries. The U.S. Federal Aviation Administration is investigating the cause of the incident. A recent string of high-profile air accidents in North America have raised concerns about aviation safety over air traffic controller shortages and their workloads. Anna Chen, Cable News.
Shares in Hong Kong soared, driven by optimism that the central government will launch more tools to shore up the economy, with the Hang Seng Index slapping its 5-day losing streak. The benchmark index rose as much as 650 points, breaching the 24,000 mark again, before it ended the day up 497 points. Daily turnover was $290 billion. Despite today's rise, the HSI erased 271 points for the week. Chinese financial stocks advanced after mainland's financial regulator ordered banks and other financial institutions to encourage more consumer lending as part of a campaign to get people to spend more. Insurers China Life and Ping An advanced 5 to 6%, while banking stocks rose 1 to 2%. Hot announced a child care subsidy of 100,000 Chinese yuan for the 3rd child, fanning speculation that other cities will follow suit. Mengniu Dairy swelled 9%, marking the 2nd best-performing blue-chip stock, while China Feihe leaped over 15%. On to the weather now. Cool in the morning, with minimum temperatures of around 14 to 15 degrees in the following couple of days. The weather will improve gradually. Windy on Sunday. mainly fine and dry in the middle and latter parts of next week. Now let's take a look at the weather around the world. That's our news tonight. I'm Evelyn Bai. Thanks for watching and good night.